Hey guys, in this video I'll be reviewing the sort of second book in the Hatchet series, so to speak, Brian's Winter. Hatchet, Brian's Winter. So spoiler-free review, this book sort of just kind of continues Brian's story, as if he hadn't been rescued from a previous book, and he has to deal with Canadian winter. And basically, this book, in my opinion, is the best survival book ever written. But of course, I'm not the most read in the genre, but from the stuff I've read, I really, really, really like it. It continues the same things from a previous one, which is that it's relatively realistic. And like I said, my expertise all comes from Survivor Man, so I'm very trustworthy on this topic. But yeah, what I mean is it's not totally crazy, just like the previous one. And once again, it features Brian sort of figuring out some new sort of situations and dealing with them in a very effective manner. And yeah, I think that this book, once again, it suffers from the same sort of pitfall as the previous book, which is that it's a bit short. But other than that, I think that this book is fantastic, and I would say that as a member of its genre, it's probably a 10 out of 10, in my opinion, and as a member of just fiction in general, it's certainly up in the 8 out of 10 sort of range, so a really, really fantastic book, and I'd strongly recommend reading it. But getting into the spoilers, this book, so what I think that one of the big improvements I think about this book is, remember I talked about in the previous video that the one weakness of the previous Hatchet book is that it sort of starts a tiny bit slow. Well, this book sort of immediately starts with Brian going from active protagonist to even more active protagonist over the course of a book. And it goes from Brian progressing from pretty, very competent to super competent. And it's just really enjoyable. So it's basically, you just kind of have a whole book of a character who is competent and driven and very active and very competent, having issues thrown at them, and them just dealing with them in interesting, effective, sort of ways that you probably could have thought of yourself, but it's just maybe you couldn't have sometimes, and it's just really enjoyable to see him go through it. And it's just really fun. Once again, we get a lot more sort of world building, so to speak, world exploration. Of course, this isn't fantasy, but it's sort of that thing where he's kind of exploring the real world in a way that is interesting and fun, and you're just kind of seeing a different side of a world, which is, in this case, the Canadian wilderness. And so this book, I think, is the strongest book featuring Brian, because it's basically, like I said, it starts on a high and just continues throughout. And so at the end, he gets, rescued, but this time, he kind of, I think this book also works a little bit better because it's a little bit less ex machina at the end, which is that he kind of makes his own rescue, in the sense that he walks to a place where he can get rescued. So it sort of feels like he's kind of coming to his own a bit more and sort of work for it a bit more, which helps with the active protagonist kind of idea. So the only thing, I'd say that there's only one flaw to this book, in my opinion. Well, two. But one flaw is that it's not long enough, once again. It's the same complaint. The other flaw I'd say is, the one thing I didn't get is, Brian, at one point, Brian / the author, says that, Brian is so in tune with the woods, he's so, he understands, blah, 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 so he doesn't really need to come back to his camp if he doesn't want to. He could just sort of go anywhere because he can find food and find shelter and stuff. And it's like, well, that's really interesting and cool, but if that's the case, why doesn't he just start walking until he finds, civilization? Essentially, in Canada, my understanding is that if you're in Canada and you start walking south, eventually you're going to hit something, even if it's all the way down in the US, right? So that was just one tiny sort of plot hole, so to speak. I'm sure that it's one of those things where one sentence could have fixed it. One sentence could have been like, yes, but he was worried about the giant river in his way, or something, I feel like would have helped that. But other than that, I think that the book is pretty much flawless, other than just being a bit short. So Brian sort of has a whole bunch of challenges to tackle, and it's also fun just kind of seeing him. It's almost like a slice of life at points, which I really enjoy, where it's like Brian's in the wilderness, there's nothing hugely horrible going on, he's just chilling out and eating a deer, and I'm like, I'm here for this, because I think it's just such an interesting setting, and interesting kind of place that I don't really mind it. That's a bit of a time it's a little bit slow. But I'd say that even though I kind of called it slow before, it's a very tight book. There's nothing here, there's not much fat. There's not, because it's so short, there's nothing that really needed to be cut out or anything, because I think everything was cut out and or was never there to begin with. But yeah, so to conclude this review, absolutely fantastic book. The only flaw I would say is it's a bit short, and that one thing about Brian not walking out, but you can see that's super nitpicky at this point. So I'd say kind of as a member of the genre, I'd call this book a 10 out of 10, and then, yeah, maybe something like an 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10, just as a general fiction book. So yeah, definitely pick it up and read it, and have a great day.